Hello and welcome to another lesson from Soflex Math. Today's lesson in our fraction unit is going to be about subtracting fractions with unlike denominators or different denominators. So let's take a look here at our first example, and it's going to be kind of similar to the adding fractions with unlike denominators. Same ideas, but we're just going to be doing a different operation. So our first problem here in yellow, we have 8/9 minus 1/4. So once again, I'll write up the steps again. So we're going to be working on finding the least common denominator of the denominators. So 9 and 4. So you could list the 4 and the 9, and you're going to list, counting by 4s, 4, 8, 9, 18, and so on. So if you did that, you'd count out and you'd end up with the same denominator. So in this case, our denominator of 4 and 9, the first one that matches, is going to be 36. So we will put 36 for both of these denominators. And then we think about 4 times what equals 36? Well, 4 times 9 equals 36. Remember, whatever you do to this part of the fraction, you have to do to the numerator. So same thing for one fraction. So 1 times 9 is 9. All right, the other fraction, 8/9, we have to do the same thing. 9 times 4 equals 36. So 8 times 4 equals 32. So remember, the top ones we had to multiply by the same thing, and then the bottoms ones we had to multiply by the same number. Okay, so our denominator now will stay the same, 36, and now we just have to do our 32 minus 9, and if we went ahead and did that, we would end up with the subtraction answer of 23. Okay, 23 is prime, so there's nothing besides 1 that you could divide both by, so this is actually going to be our final answer, which is kind of nice, so there's no simplifying needed. So 8/9 minus 1/4 equals 23/36. Let's take a look at another example. So for this example, we have 3/5 minus 1/6. So I'm going to kind of talk my way through this one rather than just writing it up. So kind of listen and see if you can follow along with just the words, and then we'll go step by step. So I have to think, what's the least common denominator of 5 and 6? So my answer to that question would be 5, 10, 15, 20, and so on, 6, 12, 18, and so on. So my answer to that question would be 30. So I'm going to put 30 as my new denominator. Remember, I can put equal signs here because when we get our value, they're going to be the same amounts. They're just going to look a little different. All right, then I ask those questions. 6 times what equals 30? 5. So 1 times 5 equals 5. 5 times 6 equals 30. So 3 times 6 equals 18. Once again, my denominator is going to stay the same, so it's still going to be 30. And then we just do 18 minus 5. And 18 minus 5 gets us to the answer of 13. So once again, we have a second answer here that doesn't need any simplifying. Remember, if you can simplify it, you have to. But for this example, we're perfectly fine at 13 over 30. And just to clarify, there's nothing besides 1. 1 is the only number I could divide both by evenly. So that's when I know this is my final answer. There's no further steps to do. Okay, let's look at 2 last examples. All right, for this example, we have 7/8 minus 3/5. Okay, so think to yourself before I write this down. I'll give you a minute. So what is, for 8 and 5, what could be the least common denominator or least common multiple? So go ahead and think in your head and see if you came up with my answer of 40. If you did, great job. All right, and like I said, some people do the shortcut. They try to just multiply the 2 denominators. Like I said, that works quite a bit, but sometimes there's a lower amount. If you did that and you didn't have the least common multiple, all you're going to have to do is simplify later on in the problem. So even if you would just wanted to use that as a strategy, that's okay. You can do that, but just realize that you may have to simplify later on. So In this one, do our little steps. 5 times 8, 3 times 8, 24. 8 times 5, 7 times 5, 35. Denominator is going to stay the same at 40. And now we're going to do 35 minus 24, which will get us the answer of 11. So 7/8 minus 3/5 equals 11/40. So we've had 3 lucky problems here with no simplifying. So our last one, let's see if we have to actually simplify our answer. So we'll try to review that as well. All right, so for this one, we have 10/12 minus 2/8. Okay, so we have some bigger numbers here. So now we have a 12 and an 8. So we'd have to count by 12s, which might be a little bit more difficult, and then we count by 8s, which would not be as difficult. All right, so my denominator, 12/24, and then 8/16/24. So my first denominator, my new denominator, is 24, which is kind of easy here. So we're going to multiply it by 2, multiply it by 2. So 10 times 2 is 20. And then we're going to do 8 times 3, 2 times 3, 6. All right, and then we're going to go ahead, and we have our new subtraction problem here. Denominator stays the same. 20 minus 6 is 14. So here we do have a chance to simplify. So we're going to find the greatest common factor. So now we're at GCF when we're talking about simplifying. And for those 2 questions, it happens to be, or 2 numbers, it's going to be 2. So I have to divide the top and the bottom to simplify to get to a final answer of 7/12. Half of 14 is 7, half of 24 is 12. So we end up with 7/12. Now, let me just show you real quick. Let me just write up this question again, and I'm going to show you how we're going to try a little bit of a different strategy here. Sometimes you can simplify the numbers ahead of time. So I'm going to rewrite our problem. So we have 10/12 minus 2/8. Okay, so you might be able to see, hey, these are not 10/12. That's not in simplest form. That's like 14/24. I could divide actually and simplify this problem. So if I divided both those by 2 before I started, I can end up with a number of 5 and 6. And then I could look at my 2/8 and I can say, hey, I can divide both of those actually by 2. I can write those in simplest form. So you can do simplest form before you even start. All right, and then I know that answer is 1/4. Okay, so I could have a new problem right here. 5/6 minus 1/4. And let's go ahead and just solve that one just to kind of show you what I mean. So if we did that, the common denominator of 6 and 4 would be a 12. So let's write that as 12. 6 times 2 and 5 times 2 is going backwards, right? So we're going back to where we started. But let me just show you kind of how it's a little bit different. So times 2 and times 2 is 10/12. Okay? 4 times 3 and 1 times 3 equals 3. Okay? And now we have our denominator of 12. And now we have 10 minus 3, which is 7. And if you'll notice here, 7/12 and 7/12. We get the same answer, which is hopefully perfect. That's what we were looking for. But you can see how after this, when we got our solution, we divided by 2 to simplify. Well, here we divided by 2 and simplified before we started. So it really does not matter whether you want to simplify at the end, which is right there, or at the beginning if you can, which is right there. Either way is perfectly fine. Just another way to look at numbers. One lesson we always want to work with is flexibility, being able to see numbers differently and work with them differently instead of just following one simple rule or one way of being taught. So hopefully these different methods made sense to you. Go ahead and give it a practice. Ask questions if you have it. And we'll see you in our next lesson from Soflex Math. Thanks for joining us.